school. And some parents of the pupils who died in that tragedy at Precious Talent Top School in Ngando have recorded statements at the Kabete police station as investigations proceed. Now, the owner of the school, who once again was at the scene of the crime, is said to have also recorded his statement with the police. At the same time, detectives from the Criminal Directorate of Criminal Investigations camped at the scene of crime, piecing together evidence of the cause of the building collapse, and the detectives mapped out where the classes were as they combed through the rubble. Investigations will also seek to find how the owner of the school was allowed to put learners in a building that was structurally unsound. And of course, the tragedy of Precious Talent School building collapse has lifted the lid off the crisis facing the education sector in the country and county of Nairobi. The situation, however, has been simmering for a long time, since the halting of construction of new schools and much later the maintenance of the same. The details of this crisis first revealed in a detailed report released back in 2014. And as Brenda Wanga now reports, the outcome of that study continues to gather dust in City Hall's library.
The tragic deaths of 8 children, pupils of Precious Talent School in Ngando, Dagoretti, has jolted the government into an admission that has been long overdue.
The school in Ngando area is something that had been brought to our attention in terms of the presence of a public school. We've never had a public school in that area. The school we have there is a private school.
This admission backed by the results of a 2014 task force on education in Nairobi. That study, commissioned by the then Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero, had sought to find out what was ailing the education sector in the county and how to fix it. The results were startling. In a county with a rapidly growing school-going population, in 2014, there were only 21 standalone ECD centers. This complemented by 205 public primary schools serving about 200,000 children in a county with a population of about 700,000 such children. The secondary school sector also suffers a deficit of 116 schools. Then there were only 86 public secondary schools in Nairobi.
They keep on coming up because the ministry does not have a solid policy on what are the considerations for you to come up with a school.
School construction, at least by the county, stalled in the 80s, while the population, especially in informal settlements, continued to rise. The result of this has been the proliferation of private and complementary or alternative schools in the county. In 2013, there were 300 complementary schools that presented 8,820 candidates for the KCPE examination, and that number is likely to have risen by now.
Alternative has played a big role because otherwise we wouldn't really have managed to deepen access to education as we have done, particularly in cities and urban areas such as Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu. But at the same time, there are lots of challenges around regularization, registration and recognition, and this is solely the Minister of Education to blame.
The report had made a raft of recommendations aimed at turning around the city's children's education fortunes. Among them, the construction of 50 new schools, especially in high population areas, with special emphasis on Mukuru, Kwanjenga and Kayole, the construction of 40 new secondary schools, and the provision of adequate water and sanitation services across all levels of school. The task force also asked the county and national governments to ensure that the hazardous asbestos used to roof more schools were replaced. The security of the children was enhanced through the construction of perimeter walls around the schools, and the comfort of children in class guaranteed through adequate spacing in classes. These recommendations, like many other reports, are still being held within its pages. 5 years later, on the ground, the education sector continues to bear the brunt with increasingly fatal consequences. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
And on my take tonight on Sidebar, we'll be breaking down those numbers further. So stay tuned for Sidebar. You'll definitely be knowing the disturbing numbers, how many pupils are in the capital, and especially those mentioned wards, and how many schools are available for them. That coming up on my take on